Okay. Hello, 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 hello. Let me know if you can hear me, please. And we'll continue some more React with OpenWeatherMap, creating our little weather application here. Duckies. All right. Okay, so let's kick this off. npm start. Let's run our project. And let's just go over what we have so far, and then let's see what we got here. Nope, not that. This goes over here on this side. Over here. And you want to put that right there. Okay, cool. All right. So in Sacramento, it's 90.25 degrees. Okay, cool. Okay. So this is our so far. This is all we have. Doesn't do a whole lot, but that's okay. We're going to be working on this. Okay. All right. Got my window set up. Cool. Okay, so the last thing we left off was use effect. Now, we'll just do a quick recap here. Use effect, again, is used when you want to run something, controlled. So, for example, we have this function here that we want to execute, this code here, excuse me, that we want to run. But in our example, we just want to run once. So we have this use effect, which you give it a function. Okay. So we give this a function. Okay. We're giving it an arrow function in this example. Okay. And we want this to run just once. Okay. That's why in the second parameter, we have a dependency list. Now, again, if you don't provide it a dependency list, this use effect will run every time the app component re-renders. Okay, so there are a couple of ways that a re-render can happen. So again, let's just talk about this again real quick. So whenever you have a component, okay, that's my component there. Whenever you have a component, there are, at least two ways that a component will re-render itself. Okay, number one is if the parent, so the parent re-renders. So if the parent re-renders, then that's going to cause the children to also re-render, because React doesn't entirely know who needs to get updated, right? Because it's possible that the state, for example, that's in the parent component, okay, that those values are going to be sent to the children as props. So React is smart, but it's not like all-knowing, so it can't make a lot of assumptions. So a component will re-render if the parent that it's a part of re-renders. Then that component React will re-render it. Number two, okay, is if the component itself, so the component itself. So if the component's state changes, okay, these are the only two times a component can usually cause a re-render. Now, it's possible that, let's say, React has some internal memory limitations where it's like, okay, I'm gonna unload this component for now to make room for another component memory. And so it's possible that React may cause certain components to become stale and will re-render them when you start to run out of memory. This is a possibility. Okay? Doesn't happen all that often, but it can happen. An example of this, for a real world example, is I don't know if if you use like an iPhone or an Android, but mostly if you have an iPhone device. Have you ever, like, let's say, been browsing YouTube, for example? Okay, let's say you're browsing YouTube, and then you send the app to the background. Okay, and then you turn your phone off. You just turn the screen off, you go get a cup of coffee, then you come back, you turn it on, and then you go back to the YouTube app. Have you ever noticed that the YouTube sometimes has to refresh a little bit? It doesn't start up automatically where it last left off. Sometimes it does like a small reboot. Now, why is that? So when you turn your phone screen off, it's possible that the iOS operating system might say like, hey, I'm gonna, free up some resources. Nobody's really using this process. I'm gonna free up the resources. Then when you go back to use that process, all the resources are gone. So it's going to try to do a soft reboot. So the application might do like a soft restart. And most apps have a contingency plan to actually pick up where you last left off. If that's the case, there's actually a cycle for applications for that. Okay, so it'll try to, start back up. Other apps that don't have this will just start up from the beginning. So another example that happens to my phone a lot, because I have an iPhone 6, so I guess the RAM is not that much, is if I'm like on YouTube, for example, then I switch to Discord, and then I take a picture because I'm going to send it to Discord, or I'm going to get a picture from the web, and I want to send it through Discord. And then I go back to the YouTube, it's completely cleared. It's like almost like if I had just started it up again, right? Because between the pictures and switching between the apps, my phone runs out of RAM, and so it has to delegate, okay, well, what was the last process you used? Which is the process that you're not using that much right now? Oh, it's YouTube? Okay, we're gonna try and free up some resources, so it'll free up that. React can do that too. Okay, so it's possible if you start to run out of memory that is a possibility. So your component has two ways to re-render. Now, when that happens, there are some times where you only want to execute a specific task only once. That's where useEffect comes into play. If you don't use useEffect, okay, and if we were like last time, we had this code outside of the useEffect, every time the component re-rendered, that code kept executing, okay? So useEffect is a way for us to control, to the best of our ability, the amount of time that a specific unit of code, a function or something, is going to run. Okay, we're trying to control it. Okay, so that's what useEffect is for. Now, if you give it an empty dependency list, which is, so useEffect takes in two arguments. The effect is your callback. That's what this is. Okay, not the actual code, but us actually just giving it a function. We're passing it a function. We call this the effect callback. Okay. The second, which is an optional parameter, is a dependency list. Okay, it's just an array of arguments that this callback will depend on. So if you want this unit of code here to be executed, again, if and only if the following dependencies, these values change, then you feed it that. So if this code had a dependency on something else, okay, then we want to rerun this code if that particular value changes. So the example that I had done before was we had an input field, and whenever I changed the input field, we wanted to get the weather for that particular location. Okay? All right. That's kind of like a recap of what we did on Monday. Okay, we're gonna continue working on that. Okay, cool. So let's try and clean some stuff up here. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm gonna just copy this part right here. Okay. I'm gonna show you a different way. So this is one way we can use. This is what's called an IFI, right? An immediately invoked function expression. But there's another way we can do this. Okay. Let's try this other way. Okay. So again, I don't want to constantly be hitting this OpenWeatherMap API. Not all the time. I just want to do it sometimes because you can get throttled. Okay? And if the state of the application hasn't changed, I don't want to call this API every time. I only want to call it when certain parameters are met. Okay. So with OpenWeatherMap, this is the API that we built, a service. So it's right here under services, OpenWeatherMap. It's just a class. All right. And this method here is marked as asynchronous. Okay. It's marked as asynchronous. Okay. So what we're going to do is before, like right now, we're just returning this JSON. So what we want to do is instead is we're just going to say return, oh, here we have that, response.json. Okay, we're going to do this. So we're just going to comment this line out. Okay, we're just going to say response.json. Okay, that's all we're going to do. Okay. All right. So now instead of doing the async and await, we're going to handle it using the promise that we're sending back. Okay. So now we're going to say OpenWeatherMap dot current weather, and it wants the city name. Okay. So for now, we're just going to hard code, whatever city you're from. So in my case, I'm in Sacramento. Okay. And then because we're gonna do this using callbacks instead of async and await, we can then attach a then. Okay. Now current weather is going to return the JSON. So at this point, we should just get the JSON data back. Okay. So we're grabbing it with the then. So what the then does is the promise here, this is what we're returning, it's a promise, okay, is going to return the JSON, okay? And that value is going to be in here, this argument, right there, okay? So the way we're able to consume this resource or catch it is by feeding it a function that will get called once the promise gets resolved, okay? So for right now, it's going to be this JSON. And I can prove this by saying console.log, and I'll just log the JSON. So we'll hit save here. And I'm going to say, here we go. There it is right there. There's that JSON. Okay. You see it on this side right here. Cool. All right. So now we have the JSON. That's our current weather, right? That's our current weather. So what we're going to now do is we're going to say set current weather, and this is that JSON. So now it tells us here the temperature, 89.46, which is what we've been having so far. Okay, cool. All right, so that's the current weather that we have so far. Now, What I would like to do is, since we have Tailwind already installed, this is something that Victoria created. Okay, so we have this, and we also have, let me pull up the other one. And we have something that looks like this. Okay? She thought it was going to be like in an app form, but we're working on a website. So we have these two things. So before we have the hourly forecast, let's do this first part where it says the weather today in Sacramento, California, and it gives you the weather in the degrees right here. Okay. So let's try that. Let's try and build this. Okay. So that's going to be our task for today. Okay. So let's create a component here. We're going to create a component called current weather. Okay. .jsx. So the purpose of this component is just to draw, right? To show us the current weather. That's all it's going to do. Let's say import everything as React from React. Cool. Okay, here was a function. Current weather. Just like that. Export default. Current weather, just like that. Okay. I'm going to hit return. And for now, we're just going to return an empty div. Okay. And we'll type in here current weather so we can see what it looks like. Okay. I'm going to copy this line. Okay. I'm going to delete all of this. Actually, I will not delete all that. So let's bring that current weather. So I'm going to say import current weather. There we go. And for now, so this is my component that I just created. So I'm going to bring it in. So current weather. Now we just see it just says current weather. That's all it does. That's all it does. So what I would like to do is I would like to feed it the actual weather report. So if we look at our design here, we need to feed it the location. Okay, so it says Sacramento. We have an icon here, and then we have the temperature. Okay, I believe this is the high and the low. Okay, so if we look at our if we look at the API documentation for OpenWeatherMap, we go under API. We go under the current weather data, go to the API docs. Okay, we scroll down here. So we can look at the here. Here in main, we have the temperature. We have the temperature min and the temperature max. So this is the actual temperature. This is the temperature where, like, if there was, let's say, some humidity or some wind, maybe the temperature feels like something else. This is like the perceived temperature, not the actual temperature, but what you perceive it to be. So we only care about what the actual temperature is. And then based off this design here, we care about the high and the low. So for right now, let's try and get this information to the screen. Okay, something that looks like this. Okay. All right. So on our current weather, we want to just have we want to be able to feed it the current. We'll call it current. Okay. Or let's do it this way. So in here, in our props, here we have our props. We want to be able to show the current temperature, min temperature, and max temperature. Okay. So there's going to be at least 3 properties that need to be passed into our current weather in order for this to work. Okay, and so we already know how to pass properties down into our components, right? We use props. Okay. So I can say const, I'll call this current, is equal to props.current, right? So that's going to be the current temperature. Const, oops, min temp equal to props.min temp. Const max temp is equal to props.max temp, just like that. Okay. And for now, we're just going to log it to the console. Console.log current min temp max temp. I'm going to log everything to the console. Okay. Hit save. And you can notice that it says undefined across the board. Now, the reason why it says undefined is because, well, we haven't passed it anything, right? We haven't passed it anything. Okay. Oops. Okay. We haven't passed it anything. Okay. Now, the problem is that when we call set current weather, the current weather that this object is actually null. So if we were to actually log this out, current weather, okay, you'll notice that it's going to say, so let me restart it. Let me go like that, refresh. So you'll notice that it starts off as null. That's a problem, because if we try to say current weather dot, main.temp, because in the main property we have our actual temperature, it's going to throw an error because we're going to try to grab the property main from an object that's null. So this is where you have to ask yourself, okay, should I have a default object for my weather? Or should I do conditional rendering? I would argue that you should do conditional rendering. So for example, if the current weather is equal to null, okay, so if we don't have a current weather report, we will return something like the following. Let's say we do like loading report ... Okay. So you'll notice right here, it'll happen really fast. You kind of have to watch it. I don't know if you saw it, but it said right there, loading report. Now it says current weather because now it's actually returning here because this is no longer null. Okay, because if I were to log this out, console.log current weather. Okay, and then if we just restart this, it'll say loading report, and now it says current weather. So you'll see here that first it was null, then it finally logged the actual report because the effect finally finished getting the data from our API, right? From the endpoint, from OpenWeatherMap. This can take some time, okay? This can take some time. Now, we can actually emulate some throttling. So we go to the network tab here, okay? I'm going to go to, on presets, I'm going to say slow 3G, okay? So I'm going to hit refresh, okay? It's going to download all the stuff. It says loading report. There you go. Now it says current weather, right? It says loading report only because the current weather at one point was null. So we return loading report. We cannot call current weather because we don't have a weather report to actually show, right? So by using under the network tab, by us purposely throttling it, right? So we can mimic poor network conditions, we can actually see what's going to happen. Now, we will replace this with like a spinner icon. We'll animate a little icon that spins to show you, hey, the weather is like loading or something. Okay. But for now, we're just doing it this way. So this is what we call conditional rendering. Okay, this is an interview question. What is this? This is called conditional rendering. What is conditional rendering? So if you're in an interview and they ask you, hey, so you say you know how to use React, so what's conditional rendering? Conditional rendering is that you render only certain components based off certain conditions. So if you have, for example, a weather report, show the weather report. If you don't have a weather report, show a spinner, like a spinning icon or something like that. Or show obtaining data or getting data. Do something, right? Just do something. Okay, cool. So now that we have, so at this point, now that we're guaranteed to have the current weather, so it's not null, now we can start passing in the temperature. So current, it's going to be current weather dot main dot temp. Okay. Next, we're going to pass in min temp is equal to current weather dot main dot, and then I gotta look at the API here. So it is temp underscore min. Okay. So temp underscore min. Then we have max temp is equal to current weather dot main dot, so this is main, and then temp max. Temp underscore max. Cool. Beautiful. So now we can pass those in as props. Okay. So I'm gonna no longer throttle, so no throttling. I'm gonna hit save here. Let's go to our console. Let's clear this up. I'm gonna comment this out. We'll save. Now you'll notice that now our current weather is logging out the current temperature, the min temperature, and the max temperature. And you can see it here. 89.17 is the current temperature. The min temperature is 82 for today, and the max temperature was 100. Beautiful. So based off this design, we have the current temperature, we have the max, and we have the min. Okay? Okay. Now let's just try and design it, make it look something like this. Okay. Now the following, so what we're going to talk about now has nothing to do with React. This is all to do with Tailwind. So now we're going to do some Tailwind. Okay, so first, let's color the background, this color. Background has to be blue. It's a very nice blue. My favorite color is blue. This is a really nice blue. Okay, so how do we do with Tailwind? With Tailwind, it's all about class utilities. Tailwind is a utility CSS framework, okay? So when we were talking about CSS like 2 weeks ago, I said that there's a couple of ways that we can write our CSS rules. One is affecting elements directly, like on a div or a h1 tag, for example, and styling those elements specifically. The other way we can do is we can actually create something called classes. And the classes you can reuse. So any element that has the class in their class attribute will be affected. So in HTML, we used class. However, because class is actually reserved for JavaScript, what's it called? React does not let you use class. Instead, they force you to use the attribute called class name. But it's effectively the same thing, okay? And it's just going to be a string. And in here, we're going to give it all the classes. So in this case, I want to change the background of my div. So background is BG, blue. I think it's like a 600. There we go. There's our background color on our div. I think that's the same. No, that's blue's darker. It's almost like a violet. Is this a specific blue that you picked, Victoria? I don't know what blue this is. If you didn't use if you didn't use Tailwind colors, I don't know what color you used. I think 900 is too dark. Go with 800. I think 800. I think 800 looks good. Yeah, whatever. She didn't use the correct one. It's not, but that's fine. Okay, cool. So it is. There's our background color. Okay. Doesn't look perfect, but there it is. All right. Cool. So what's the next thing? Well, we want to show the current weather. Okay. What's 800? I don't think it's 800 either. I don't know. Maybe I'm blind. I don't know. I can't actually tell. Okay. So the next thing we want to do is we want to show the current temperature. Okay. So let's do that. So we'll use, let's say, an H2. Okay, this will be the current temperature. So remember, we're in JSX world. If we want to inject some JavaScript, which this is right here is JavaScript, we use the curly braces. Notice that the curly braces here turn blue, they're not gray. Okay, this is how we escape. If I type in current, and hit save, now there's a temperature again, 89.17. The problem is that it's black. Okay, so the contrast between black and this blue color is really hard to see. So what do? Well, let's change the text color. So we'll say class name. We'll say text white, for example. There you go. Oh, now we can actually see the text there. Beautiful. Again, all this is Tailwind. Cool, very simple. If we look at our, let's see, can I, is there a way I can, yeah, I can. Okay, cool. Nice, cool, we got this. All right. So this is pretty big, right? It says 93 and then it's degrees Fahrenheit, so we'll fix that. So let's change the font size and say text, and we'll say 2XL. What do you guys think? Yeah, okay, probably be bigger than that. Say 4XL. All right, that looks good. So it's 89.17. Okay. Now let's do this bottom part right here, which is 102. So it's the high slash and then the low. So we can achieve that by using so we'll use a p tag here. For example, we'll use a p tag. Okay. And then here, I want to put the high temperature. So again, I need to inject some JavaScript. So I'm going to start off with my curly braces to start escaping. And I'm going to type in the max temp. Hit save. You'll see the max temp is right there, but we can't see the color. So in the p tag, we're going to say class name. We're going to change the text color by saying text white. Cool, now it's that. We then have like this little forward slash. So I'm going to say space, forward slash, space, and then it has the min temperature. So again, we'll escape again using the curly braces, and we'll put in the min temperature in here. Look at that. So here we have our temperature, and then we have our max slash our min. Beautiful. Again, not perfect, but we're getting there. Okay. Okay. Now we want to have this degree symbol. Okay, we want to have this degree symbol. Now, one way we can achieve this is by using the HTML symbols. So there's like a bunch of symbols that we can have with HTML. One of them is degree one. So the way you do it is you start off with an ampersand, like that, and then degree, semicolon. So this is one of them. Okay. So this is a popular symbol, right? It's a degree. So I'll hit save. There's a degree. Ooh, there's a symbol right there. Bam. Now I want to put F because this is in Fahrenheit. So I'll hit save. Now it says 89.17 degrees Fahrenheit. Beautiful. Now it's really up to you. Should we round this or not? That's totally up to you. If we wanted to round this to the nearest temperature, or we can keep it to, you know, to 2 decimal places. In this case, based off the design document, it looks like it's rounded. So let's round it. So how do we round in JavaScript? Well, we use the math library, math.round. And we pass in the digit. So there it is, math.round current. Now it says 89 degrees Fahrenheit. Beautiful. So let's fix these other temperatures. So in max temp, we're going to replace that with math.round, pass in max temp. Now it says 100 degrees. Beautiful. We'll do the same thing to min temp. Math.round, pass in min temp, save. Beautiful. Look at that. Almost looks identical, right? Not yet, but we're getting pretty close. Okay, cool. Very cool. We'll just remove that. All right. Okay, so what else do we need to do? So we want to have this thing at the top, the weather today. So we'll do that at the very top. So we'll do a p tag. We'll say the weather today in dot 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 dot. You notice that the text here is black. Can't see that. So class name, text white. Oh, now text is white. Beautiful. This is very easy, right? Very simple. When using Tailwind, a lot of this stuff is very, very simple. Okay, so the problem that we have is we wanted to make it look like this. So we have the data, but now we just got to format this correctly. Okay, we have to format this correctly. Okay. And one of the things that I'm kind of scared of right now is the fact that every time I save, useEffect is getting called again, which is causing us to hit this API endpoint. And when that happens, I'm actually, because I'm on the free version of OpenWeatherMap, I only have a certain amount of calls that I can do, okay, before I get throttled. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to log the current weather report just once, and I'm going to copy this. There's a way for me to copy this. Stringify. Weather. I don't want to get throttled. That's why. Okay, here we go. I'll just copy this. Copied. Okay. And then, actually, is there a better way for me to do this? I think there should be. If I go here, here's the state. No, I can't just copy this whole thing. Copy value to clipboard. Oh, okay, cool. All right, so there we go. And for now, I'm just going to comment this out. I'm going to comment out the open weather report because I don't want to constantly be getting it. Just for now, because I'm going to constantly be changing this, and I don't want to keep hitting the API, or else I'm going to get throttled again. So this should still work. So let's say 88 degrees. Now it's going to stay like this. Perfect. All right, beautiful. Okay, so if we look at the current weather API response, here's the example. Okay, there is a property here called weather. Okay, property there called weather, and it's going to be an array. Now, each element is going to be a JSON object, a JavaScript object. Okay, and then we have this icon. Could you copy that JSON to Discord? My key is still throttled. Oh, okay, yeah, sure. I'll paste it here. Oh, I can't paste it in on the YouTube, so I'll paste it in the Discord. Okay, so here, go to general, JS. There you go. Okay, I put it in the Discord. That way you don't get throttled, or you still throttled, right? Okay. What'd you do? What'd you say you had? Like 6,000 hits in like 1 minute? Okay, cool. So one of the cool things about OpenWeatherMap, oh, 4,000. Okay. Yeah, still quite a bit. In OpenWeatherMap, if we go over here, we type in OpenWeatherMap and we type in icons. There's this thing called weather conditions. Okay. And we can actually get the icons. Check out the icons right here. We can actually get these icons. Very cool. See the day icons and the night icons. And there's with these little they have these numbers. There's a bunch of numbers you can see. Here are the they call the weather condition codes. Okay. So for 200, there's your thunderstorms, whatever. There's your IDs and whatnot. Okay, these are the codes. The question is, how do we get the actual icons themselves? So you just read over this, the example here, for example, right? So this is an example of that giving you the weather report. And in the weather, we have the icon right here, okay? So 10N, so you can see the description here is light rain. So we go to 10N, that is a, there you go, it's like rain. Okay, so you'll get this icon. So how do we get this though? So here are the full list of codes, all right here, okay? But here's the icon description. Okay, and the way you do it is, here's the URL. So it's openweathermap.org/image/wn/ and then your code, and then you have this option of doing like, I think it's ×2 all the way to ×4, I believe, at least the size. Did they say? I don't remember what they say. Okay, they don't say. Okay. So let's take this. So copy link. We'll take that. And in the current weather, what we're going to do is, here we're going to say, call this weather code is equal to, and then for us, if we look at the current weather API, it's going to be under main, no, not main, weather. It's going to be an array. Grab the first one, and it's under icon. So what does that look like? Well, that's going to look like current weather, okay, dot, and then we've got to look at the property weather. It's an array, so we're going to grab the first one, and that's going to be an object, so we say dot icon. So we'll call this icon code. Okay, we're going to pass this to the current weather. So there's your icon code. Okay. Now all we need to do is we need to grab this URL and we need to replace where it says 10D with our icon code. I'm going to copy this link. So copy the link. And Victoria wants us to have the icon above this. So we'll do it up here. We're going to use an image tag, img. Okay. Images are self-closing. We're then going to do, for the image, you do a source. So what's the source going to be? Well, it's this link, except we want to replace this code with our the code that gets passed in. So if we look at in the current weather, we call that prop icon code. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and grab that. So const icon code is equal to props dot icon code, just like that. Now you'll notice that here, instead of using double quotes, I am using backticks. So the reason why I like to use backticks in this kind of case when I need to inject something into a string is because I can replace this. This is the thing we want to replace with a $sign and then a set of curly braces. I can just type in my icon code like that. So now if I hit save, okay, there it is. There's my icon. So this icon was, what's our icon? I don't even know what the icon is for this one. So let's go under the weather. So the icon here is 01D. So we go over here, 01D, it's going to be this icon right here for a clear sky. Cool. Weather today in, now we just got to get the location. If you go to the current weather API, we can actually get the location. So here we have the, so let's see, just make sure we have this correct. So if we go to sys, so SYS, so like sys, like system, there's the country, so we can get the country code. And then where's the name? There's the name, Sacramento. Okay, so if we need to pass also, we'll do it in the front because I'm running out of space here. We're going to say state equals, that's under current weather, dot name, that'll be the state, and then country will be under current weather, dot sys, right? Here's the property, SYS, kind of like system. And then this is a JSON, a JavaScript object, and we want the country. So we want this property, country. So sys dot country. Cool. We'll hit save. Now we just got to draw that. So here we'll do it right after it says the weather today in. We'll do an we'll do an H2 again, another header. So it says the weather today in. So we got to grab those properties. So const, we call that, what was it, state? Did I call it state? Yeah, the state is equal to props dot state. Now we just need to get the country. Const country is equal to props dot country, like that. Okay, so Victoria, or at least if we look at the design has the country, comma, and then, I mean the state, comma, the country. So let's do that. So in here, we're going to do state, comma, again, we have to inject country. Hit save. So it says the weather today in Sacramento, USA, just like we have here. Oh, we want the, okay, so here we want to change that. We want to put California. Let's see if we can actually grab that information. So first, let's change this H2, class name, text white. You can actually see it. Okay, so let's look at the weather API to see if we can actually get the state. So here we have the US. This is an example of Mountain View, but does it say California ever? I don't think we can actually get the state. Looks like we can just get the country. I don't think we can get the state, but we can at least get the country. So at least it says right here, Sacramento, USA. So Sacramento, US. I vote skip the California state. Okay. So the weather today in Sacramento, US is 88 degrees Fahrenheit. Beautiful. Is this okay, guys? Are you guys following along? If I remember right, when I used OpenWeather, I got the coordinates off the API and then used Google for location info, which included state. Yes, so that's a smart idea. We'll have to introduce another dependency, which is now Google, right? To find that. So yeah, that's totally a valid approach. Probably, I would say it's the better approach. But I guess for now, just to not overcomplicate things, we'll just stick with the the city name and then the country of origin. But yeah, ideally you would want to use something like Google and get the location information. I know they have an API for that. But if I remember correctly, I think you have to pay for it. If you give it if you give it a GPS coordinate, I think they might have a free version, but again, you get throttled as well. Okay. So does anybody have any questions so far? Everybody's very quiet, so nobody's really asking me any questions. So you guys have questions, please ask. If I'm going too fast, if you want me to repeat something, please let me know. It's free under a certain amount of usage. It also gives you autocomplete for location. Yes, that is true. It does give you autocomplete. Right, so if nobody has any questions, we will continue going. So I just have a question for you guys. Does anybody see a problem with our current approach that we have here for current weather, this component? Does anybody see a problem? So to reiterate the question, does anybody see a possible issue with the way we're using our current weather component? Is there something in here that has, that could be done better? Does anybody see the problem that we're kind of like putting ourselves in? Nobody? So we have a lot of props, man. Yeah, yeah. But this component, requires that we have all these props. So again, if you haven't spotted it, I'll tell you right now. The issue that we have is this, the image. Okay. This is a problem. Can anybody see why this is a problem? What's wrong with our approach to getting the icon for our weather? What's the problem? Can anybody see it? Come on, guys, think. Anybody? Nobody? It's the wrong icon if we going off the specs. Um, I think it's not Victoria's fault. Victoria didn't know what the icons probably look like for OpenWeatherMap. It's okay. It's okay. Remember, this design that Victoria gave us is just a mock, right? She didn't know that, uh, these icons would be different. So, but yes, that's a good observation. But for the mock, it's okay. But what's the problem? What's the real problem that we have here? Nobody? Okay. So the problem is, you guys ready for it? The problem is that we have this link right here directly. This is a problem. Now, why is this a problem, you might ask? It's giving us the icon. We have our, we have our information. This looks good. Yes. On the outside, it looks good. But here's the problem. What if your boss, comes into your office or whatever and says, hey, OpenWeatherMap is too expensive to continue using in our application. We're going to switch over to some other weather channels, system. How quickly can you get it up and running? We have like less than a day. Can you get this done? Okay, cool, thanks. And then they just walk away. You're just like, oh crap, right? Can you see why this could possibly be a problem? Inside of this component, which is just supposed to draw data, we have made an API call right here. This is way too specific for this component. This component, the way that we're kind of building it, because it has no state, this is what we call a dummy component. Okay? This is a dummy component. Now, the reason why we call it a dummy component is because okay, let's do a little comment here. So the reason why we call this a dummy component is because this component does not keep track of state. Its sole purpose is to receive data and display it. By us having this URL, this component is no longer a dummy component. It's no longer a dummy component. It now has, this component is what we say currently is tightly coupled. Okay? So this component, so the problem, this component is tightly coupled with the OpenWeatherMap API. Look, it says, literally says OpenWeatherMap, right? It literally says OpenWeatherMap there. This component knows too much. It knows too much. So Alex is saying, couldn't the icon like change or get nuked on their end? So again, here's the problem when you're using external APIs from somebody else. That can happen. So that's just, you have to weigh the pros and cons when you're using other people's APIs. Like for example, if you use Google API to do your location services, you are sort of kind of betting that Google will not one day just stop existing, go bankrupt, or turn off its services. That's kind of what you're banking on, that they don't go bye-bye. So your concern is totally a valid concern. Couldn't the icons either change or get nuked? Yeah. So, if the icons change, it's okay, because look what we're doing here, right? We're just providing a code. So that's pretty dynamic. The problem is that this current weather knows too much information. Look, it knows that we're going to go to weather map to get the image. This is bad. Instead of passing the icon code, what we should actually be doing is passing in the icon URL. Let whoever's going to use this component, let it be in charge of figuring out where to get the URL or how the URL should look like. The current weather should just consume that URL, put it in the image tag, and call it a day. Whether it comes from OpenWeatherMap, Google, Giphy, Facebook, Twitter, it doesn't matter. This component shouldn't know too much information. Its whole point is just to render something. right? It has no state. That's not its job. So we're going to change this to icon URL. And we're going to obliterate this entire thing. So I'm going to copy this real quick. We'll go copy that. So now what we want to do is actually have something called icon URL. Change this to icon URL, like so. We're going to go over here. And where we passed in the icon code, instead of doing icon code, we're going to do icon URL. Okay. And then I'm going to paste. Again, this is still pretty terrible, the way this looks. But I'm going to inject this into here instead. Okay. So we still get the same result. However, when we look at the current weather, it just has a bunch of information and it's just displaying that information. That's it. Nothing more, nothing less. Okay. I believe that this information for a weather service is pretty standard. You want to know what the current temperature is. You want to know what the min temperature, max temperature. You're probably going to have an icon of sorts. You can probably get the state and you can probably get the country. This is information, this is data that is pretty standardized in weather services, right? We can like kind of agree on that. That's pretty standard. So if we needed to swap out OpenWeatherMap API with something else, right? With something else, we should be able to do it rather quickly and efficiently. Wouldn't you agree? So this component here is in fact reusable, and we can use it for different types of APIs, right? Either OpenWeatherMap or Google Weather, or what's the other one? Yahoo Weather or something like that. Whatever. The Weather Channel. Maybe the Weather Channel has an API. I don't know, right? But this is pretty standard information, pretty standard data that we can get from a weather service. So if you look at this now, if we change the weather service, we don't have to touch current weather. This should stay the same. Okay? This should stay the same. Okay, cool. Now let's take a look at how this looks like. This looks terrible, right? It kind of looks okay. It doesn't look that bad. But, Victoria created us this design, so we got to make it look like this. So it seems to me that Victoria wants us to show the current weather on the left side, and then on the right side to show the hourly forecast. That's another API call we can do to actually get this information. To get the hourly forecast, we use the 5-day, 3-hour forecast right here. So 5-day forecast for any location or city, 5-day forecast with a 3-hour step. So every 3 hours we will get, every 3 hours you get a different, well, it's going to give you an array where every element in that array is going to be the temperature in 3-hour increments. Yeah, the blue she picked is a lot nicer than the one that Tailwind has. But we can always change that, so it's not a big deal. So here's a list, and look at this. Here's the weather report. Here's one weather report, and there's a comma, and the 3 dots implies that there is more. So you'll notice that this looks very similar to the current weather result. Okay, this part right here looks very similar. Okay, so we should be able to figure out how to get something like this. Well, we have the hours, the icon, and then we have the temperatures, the high and the low, as hourly forecast for this day, today's date. I don't think it is. You keep saying that, but I don't think it is, because I do 900. It just looks dark. Oh, it is. No, it's just this one looks dark. Like, no, maybe am I tripping? Am I tripping? These aren't the same blue, are they? Like this is like a little more flat, a little bit more grayish. This one's a little bit more vibrant. I don't know. Maybe I'm tripping. I don't know. Maybe it's just my monitor. I don't know. Okay, cool. It is the same? All right, then then I'm just tripping. Okay, so what's our next goal? Our next goal is to show the weather split up in half. We have this, we have this. One side and one side. Okay, so how can we do this? How can we achieve this split view? When we achieve the split view, we will, format it like this so it looks exactly like this. Because right now, it doesn't look like that. So how do we do that with Tailwind? How can we do that? Okay, well, Tailwind is actually really easy to do that. Okay, it's really easy to do that. So here's the current weather. Okay, here's the current weather. So what I'm going to do for now is I'm going to comment that current weather out. So we just have this blank. It's all blank right here. Okay. Let's create a layout. Okay, let's create our layout so we can split the screen in half. We're going to split the screen in half. Okay, so how do we do that? So I'm going to create two divs. These divs are going to serve as my containers. Now remember, whenever you have a div, the div will always try and take up as much of the width as the parent as possible. Okay? And the height is going to depend on the contents of its children. So for example, if I go here and I say class name, I change this to BG red 500, okay? There's nothing gets drawn, right? Because the height is 0 because it doesn't have any children, right? This is commented out. But as soon as I say something like hi, now it has some height. And the height is the height of its children, which is just this character, this text. Okay, so how do we split this? Okay, let's split this. Okay, so what we do is with Tailwind, it's very easy. You do a div. It's going to be my first half. So how do I do this? I say class name, and for now, we know that the parent has a background color that is red. So on this one, this child, I'm going to change the background color to, let's say, blue 900. Okay. And again, it all goes away because the parent's height is going to depend on its children. And this is a div. And this container's height is going to depend on its children. And it's empty. But if we put hi inside of here, now we have blue. Now you'll notice that the blue is going to take up everything of the parent, so we no longer see the red. So I'm going to put this as left side. So there's left side. I'm going to create another one. Here's this div. This is the right side. Okay. Now you'll notice that one is blue, one is red. Why is that? Well, in HTML, right, things by default want to stack top to bottom when you're working with divs. When you're working with divs, they stack like pancakes, one on top of the other. Okay? And the reason why this div gets pushed down to the bottom is because of the way the display is set. Divs are block displays, which means they always want it to be displayed on their own line, and they always want to take up the entire width of the parent. So the parent div is this div. It has no restrictions on the width, and so it's going to just take up the entire space. However, let's look at this child, this one that says left side. Let's restrict this width to only half. So with Tailwind, we can do percentages. So we say W dash, and we can do a fraction. So let's say one half. Hit save. Now look at this. The left side is now only half. And then look at this. There's nothing there because this div is now restricted to only 50% of its parent's width. And if the parent goes all the way over here, then this div right here, this left side, is going to just only occupy 50%. So if I were to stretch this, oops, here we go. If I were to stretch it, it only takes up 50%. See that? It only ever takes up 50%. So what about this right side, right? What about this right side? How can we get this right side to be right next to it? Well, we can achieve this with Tailwind as well. And so the way we can do that is using something called a flex. So the div containers always want to be stacked on top of each other. But if we use a utility from Tailwind called flex, this is called a flex layout, it causes this div's children, right? Because I called it on this div. So it's going to cause this container's children to be stacked from left to right. So if I hit save now, they're now stacked from left to right instead of on top of one another. So instead of being stacked vertically, we're laying them out horizontally. So they're now horizontally aligned. Look at that. See that? Left side, right side. So I can be a little bit more, pedantic if we wanted to, and I can say class name. Let's say I'll change this background color to be green. Again, just to make a point here. And I'll restrict its width to also be 1/2. There you go. So 1/2, 1/2. Now this one's green. Now you can really tell that this is the right side and this is the left side. Okay. Now we have the first part of the design that is splitting up this entire container up in two, left side and right side. Okay. But the whole thing needs to be blue. All right, so let's fix that. So how can we do that? First, let's remove all this dummy stuff. So BG, we want the parent to be blue, 900. We'll remove this blue off the children. We'll remove this green off the child. Boom. Now everything is blue. So the only problem we have now is what? We can't see the text because it's pretty dark. This background is pretty dark. So we need to contrast the text color. So we can do that on a per component basis, or at the very top of this container, we can say, hey, make all the text white. There you go. Now it's all white. So that's going to be the default color. If you have any text inside of this container, your default color will be white. There you go. Now we have left side, we have right side. Cool. Now this current weather, let's move this up to the left side, uncomment it, remove left side, hit save. Now we have the left side. The weather today in Sacramento is, and there you go. Very close, very close. Not exact. Hey, but we're getting there. Okay. So how can I get this so that this entire container fills up the entire viewport? How can we do that? Well, on this div, which is the parent container here, let's force the height to take up the entire thing. So how do we do that? We're going to say H is for height, and we want to take up the screen. Hit save. Boom, now we're all blue. This div, remember, when you're working with divs, its height is going to be equal to the height of the biggest child. Since the biggest child was this guy right here, this one, it came up to here, it only ever drew up to here. That was the height of the parent. But now that we're telling it, hey, I want you to take up the entire screen, now it's going to take up the entire screen. So watch what happens when I color this div. So this left side, let's color this left side. Let's change the background color to red so we can kind of see what's going on here. Okay. Okay, there we go. So this div is now being stretched the entire way. So this whole thing is red. Okay. Now the reason why this part is blue and this part is red is because if we go to the current weather, we change this. See that? This div is blue. So let's remove that. Let's remove that from there. Now we see it like that. Okay. Again, we don't want it to be red, but I'm just trying to show you what it looks like. So here I'll change this right side to, let's say, green. You know, we can see what happens here, and there you go. It's all filled. You guys see how we can do this with Tailwind? This is very easy to achieve with Tailwind, right? Doing something like this with CSS, you can do it, but it's going to require to write way more CSS than you probably need to. But with Tailwind, it's just a couple commands, and we're good to go. Cool. Watermelon colors. Oh yeah, I didn't even realize that I had done that. Okay. Very cool. Does anybody have any questions about laying these things out using Tailwind? So to recap, what we just did here, the div elements, okay, the div elements always want to stretch the entire width of its containing parent. Okay. This is what divs want to do. Their height, okay, their height h is going to depend on the children. Okay, on its children. If the div has no children, it has a height of 0. Okay? It has a height of 0. Okay? And so because a div always wants to stretch out the entire width, the other thing is that a div also wants to start off on its own line. Always wants to start on its own line. So if I have two divs like this, not div, but a div, okay, that are right next to each other like this, we say that they are siblings. They will be stacked on top of one another. Okay, they'll be stacked. So if we think about it, if we have this container here, here's the parent container, whatever this is. Maybe it's a div, a section, maybe an article, or maybe a paragraph. It doesn't matter. Divs want to take up the entire width. So they want to take up the entire width. And the heights depend on the children. So again, if they have no children, the height is 0. So divs will be stacked because these are block displays. Divs have a display called block. So anything that is a block display, like a p tag, for example, will also want to take up the entire width. And its height is also going to depend on its children. Okay? Another type that does the stacking is going to be the section. That's one we'll probably use a lot. The other one is article. These ones always want to stretch the width, and their heights, again, depend on the children. So if we want to, if we wanted to have two blocks or any kind of style, any kind of component to be stacked right next to each other, not div. Let's say a div and a p tag, because these two are block styles, right? They're block. If we want to achieve this, okay, then the parent container must have a flex display type. Okay, when we put flex, every child will be aligned horizontally. So not just the first two, but every child. So you can have, you know, a bunch of children like this. This is called flex. This causes the siblings to be rendered right next to each other. Okay, so they get rendered one. So this could be like a div. This could be a p tag. This could be another div. I mean, I don't know, right? Depends on how you want it to go. So flex allows you to display things horizontally instead of stacking them on top of each other like pancakes. Okay, that's how we were able to achieve this left side and this right side, because here's the container and I made it a flex type. See, display is flex. If I switch this to a block, they're back to being stacked on top of each other. See, right side now is on the bottom. If I make it flex, left to right. If I remove this, its default is block. So now they're stacked up against one another on top of each other, just like pancakes. But if I make it flex, boom, they're stacked left to right. So if I add another thing here, so I'm gonna call this something else. This will also get stacked, right? Left to right. Beautiful. Beautiful. Okay. All right, so it's 7:23, so we're probably not going to be able to get to the hourly forecast. But does anybody have any questions as far as the layout is concerned? Like how we're using flex, why we're using flex, how we're getting the div to stretch the entire screen using HScreen. Does anybody have any questions about any of this stuff? Divs make much more sense now. Okay, good. I hope that's the case. Yeah. Again, if you have any questions about anything, please ask. Okay. So a div, just to help you out there, Alex, a div is nothing really special, right? A div is just a container. A div stands for a division. It's a division in your HTML content. It just means that the following content inside of my div, there was no other semantically correct way of containing this content. So you just use a div. It's just a bag. It's just a container. The real part that you need to understand is how displays work on HTML elements. So if you were here for the CSS stuff, we have block display types. We have block. We have inline. We have something called inline dash block. And now we learned a new one, flex. Okay. So block means, so blocks are examples of like divs, p tags, sections, article, these tags. Inline are examples of like images. So the img tag, labels, span, what else? Button. Okay. Oh, no, not button. And not image, actually, not images. So labels, span, the A tags for the links. Inline blocks are examples of images, button, okay, and SVG. These are inline block. So what's the difference between inline and inline block? Well, if you're inline, you cannot set the height of that thing. You cannot set the height. So if I have a label and I say, hey, label, I want you to be a height of 10,000, it's going to ignore it. It doesn't draw. It ignores it. So inlines ignore heights. So if you try to set the height, it ignores it. Inline block, or okay, let's start over. Blocks are going to try and take up the entire width. The height is going to depend on the children. You could also set the height manually if you wanted to. So blocks will respect the height that you tell it. It will also respect the width. But if you do not tell it what the width is supposed to be, its default behavior is just to take up the entire width of its parent container. So it'll just try and take up the entire thing. The other thing is it's going to want to stack on top of each other. So it always wants to be on its own line. Okay. Inline, okay, is what it says. It's in line with the content. So these are examples of like labels, the A, which is the anchor tags, span tags, and they also, they'll always be side by side in the content. So if you have like a paragraph or a sentence, if you use like a span, a label, or an anchor tag, which is like a link, they'll always be side by side. If you try to set its height, it will ignore it because it wants to be in line. It's not going to just expand, okay? Inline block is kind of like inline. However, if you set the height, it will respect it. It will cause that line to grow, okay? Flex is almost like block in a way. It still tries to take up its entire width. The difference is how it renders its children. So flex display will force its children, irregardless of their display type, to be drawn from left to right instead of top to bottom. So instead of being stacked like pancakes, they're forced to go from left to right. Okay, so these are like the 4 ones that we know of so far. Block, inline block, and there's the other one we haven't really talked about, which is none. So if you have a display of none, you don't get seen. For example, here, this class name, if I put none, let's see, I think in Tailwind it's called hidden. It kind of goes away. So and you'll notice that there's a squiggle here. The reason why there's a squiggle here is because, hey, there's 2 properties that are affecting the display. It's like, yeah. So you can only change the display. You should only have a utility that displays the display once. So flex affects the display. Notice how the display is now flex. And then hidden also just changes the display. The display is now none. So basically it's hidden. Where'd it go? It's gone. So if you wanted to hide some content, you can use the hidden flag, the hidden utility from Tailwind. That'll change the display type to none, which makes it invisible. It just disappears. Okay? So we have block, inline block, flex, and none. Okay, there are some other ones, but these are the ones that you're probably going to use, 90% of the time. Okay, so hopefully maybe that clears up divs even more, and maybe some of the other stuff, especially when we talk about, display types. These are the main ones. And so with flex, we were able to achieve this, having content on the left and content on the right. Okay. And so what's today? Wednesday. So on Friday, we will finish the hourly forecast. So now that we have this layout here drawn, we have this. We'll fix this up and we'll finish this one up, the hourly forecast. It shouldn't take us that long. This will be a simple map. So we can solve this using a map. And then we'll just, format everything to make it look nice, and then we'll call it a day. Okay? And then I think next week we'll be starting with Node.js. So we'll be going over Node.js and then doing some introductions to MongoDB, which is going to be our database to be used for ours. Because remember, we're still going to build a social media application from the ground up. There's just so much to go over in so little time. Yeah, so we'll be doing more React on Friday, doing some more. I gave you guys an exercise to do, so hopefully you guys were able to finish that. I'm going to give you another exercise on Friday that's going to deal with OpenWeatherMap, and I'm going to give you like a very simple design layout, and then you guys will have to do it using Tailwind. So it's going to require you to write some React code, use OpenWeatherMap, and also use Tailwind. So you guys can start getting some practice on making your websites look, kind of fancy. Okay? So on Friday, we'll finish the right side, which is going to be displaying the time um, every hour or every 3 hours or whatever. And yeah, and that should do it for this week. And the next week we'll be starting off with Node.js. Okay. So if anybody has any questions, comments, or concerns, let me know. If not, I will see you guys on Friday. So let me know if you guys have any questions before we head out. Okay? Nobody? All right. All right. See you guys on Friday. Bye, everyone. Oh, we got a question from Jimbo on Discord who asks, how easy is it to convert React code to React Native and make an app out of a website? Um, hmm. So how easy? Well, the syntax and how you create components, how you use hooks and states is the same. The problem is that there is no div. There is no p tags. Those are very specific to React Web. React Native has different types. They have views. They have text. Those are the tags that they use. So it's slightly different. Could you take a React website and make a React Native one? Well, if you have done your homework and if you built your components that are semantically sound, then the answer is yes. The only difference is you're going to have to switch things from like divs to views, p tags or labels to text and stuff like that. And yeah, so you'll have to change some stuff, but the overall structure will basically stay intact. So yes, it is possible, but it's not like you can copy and paste. You will have to change the tags, but which will be a time consuming. But again, if you built your components correctly, it shouldn't take you that long. You're gonna have to change every single file, but it shouldn't take you that long. Um, my best bet is you can try it, but more likely than not, if you just quickly built a website using React and you're trying to port it to React Native, you're gonna have a hard time. So just make sure that when you're building your React code, you're always being semantically correct with your HTML. Everything has to make sense, and you should be fine. The other option is if you want to make an app, you actually want to make an app and you want to reuse your React code, okay, with only some minor changes, is to look into a framework called Capacitor.js. This is actually what I used to actually build some mobile apps. So that's called Capacitor.js. So you can look into this. This is actually something I really recommend. And Capacitor 3 actually just came out. I haven't tried it yet, but it's supposed to be like the bee's knees. So what Capacitor.js is, it basically allows you to, well, it's a hybrid application. This actually builds a hybrid application. So you can build your application using HTML. Okay, so this is more like a web app. So you can use your web skills to build your front end. However, you run it on a native device and you put it on the Play Store or the Apple Store, and it looks like a regular app. However, you're using HTML, JavaScript, and CSS. So it's basically a very fancy web view. So if you know what a web view is, then you can kind of understand what capacitor is basically doing. So yeah, it's pretty cool. So this is a web-focused set of APIs that enables an app to stay as close to web standards as possible while accessing rich native device features on platforms that support them. So you can write your HTML code, your JavaScript stuff, whatever. And then if you need to access native functionality, Capacitor has a bridge that you can actually communicate with the native side. So for example, let's say you were tasked to build a mobile app that accesses native functionality such as the health SDK. So on Apple, it's called Health API, I think. And then on Android, I forgot what it's called. I forgot what it's called on Android, either Heart or something like that. So that's stuff that's native to the device, right? So if you wanted to display the information like somebody's heart rate or something like that, right, on your on this app, you need to get the information from the native device, but yours is just a plain website. So how do you do that? Well, Capacitor gives you a bridge. So you can actually use your JavaScript code to actually execute and request code from native, and then it sends it over to you. So there's a way for you to create a bridge to actually communicate. And you can create your own plugin. I actually created my own plugin. So I haven't worked on it because I've been like doing some other stuff, but I actually created my own plugin for Capacitor called Safe Area. So what this plugin does, do I have a picture here? No, I do not. So one thing you'll notice that in newer devices, right, you have the notch. So you have a notch. And so what this does is specifically for Android, because on iOS it actually works kind of out of the box. But on Android, this is Android code right here. Okay, this is Android code. So what my plugin does is it goes into Android. It actually gets the cutout. That's what it's called, the cutout for the area where you can actually not draw because the camera's there. I can actually get that height. Now that I have that height, I can add padding to the screen so I know where not to draw. Okay. And so this then gives me the ability to make sure that I have padding for my content. So this is a plugin that I wrote. So if we look here under Android, you'll see that I actually wrote Android code. So here's the plugin. So here's an inset. This is just like a model. So this is all in Java. As you can see, it's import Java public class. This is all Java right here. Okay. And then here's the actual, this is the actual plugin. So this actually does all that for me. Okay, gets me the area insets and yada yada, does a bunch of registration, does some calculations, and then here's the beautiful part. When I do get safe area insets, there's this thing called a plugin call. This is the bridge that I'm talking about. So I create a JavaScript object using Java's API thing, and we have this. You have this API that you can use called call and success, and you can pass back a JavaScript object. So this is serializable. So you just have to make sure that the data from the native side can be serialized to send back to the web side. All right, because this is the bridge part. So you need to do what's called marshalling. That is making sure that the data you have can actually be interpreted and sent over through a bridge. So we're doing that here. And then, so that's on the native side. So that's on Android. And then the way we consume it is through, I created this controller that just consumes it. So, you know, whenever you need to get the information, here's the plugins. I just grab the information, the insets, and I just update it. They say get area insets. This is basically going to call the Android code, but I'm doing this from freaking the web, right? This is TypeScript, but you know, this is on the web part, right? This is the web part. So this is not even on Android side, but the bridge is here. It's kind of complicated, but the bridge is there because the capacitor gives you the ability to write native code and then consume it on the web side of things. So it's pretty dope actually how it works. But you just have to write this yourself. So you can get access to that. So you can imagine what you can actually do now. You can get notifications. You can actually build a app that can call people, right? So you can have buttons that types a phone number, and then you can execute a call on somebody's phone if you wanted to, or send somebody a text message, or receive notifications, or whatever. Those are all things that you cannot do from a website, and it requires that you have a native application. But with Capacitor.js, you can do that. So, there's pros and cons to all this. It's just a matter of how you want, you know, how you want it to work. But yeah, I recommend it. It's great. I use this for my senior project, and I think it turned out pretty well. Our senior project looks, it's here. You can actually see it here. So the features right here. So this is what the app looks like. So it looks like a regular app, right? It looks like like a native application, but it's not. We built this using React, and the actual native application is being powered by Capacitor. So it looks like a regular, native application. It's very deceiving that way, but it's not, right? So we built this, so it looks pretty dope. Yeah, we even have maps, so you can have a map view here, and this is all through React, not React Native, but React.js. This is all done using web technologies with a wrapper, which is Capacitor, to actually give us the native application that we can actually put on, let's say the Play Store or the iOS store. Cool. So yeah, beautiful stuff. Okay, so I've used Capacitor. I recommend it. It's very easy to use. It's so easy to use. It's actually kind of deceptive. It feels like it's hard, but it's not. It's really easy to use. Yeah, if you want to learn how to use that, let me know, and I can, help you out on that. That does look good. I was thinking to take a crack and redesigning the student center for my senior project. Yeah, why not? That student center needs a full on like redesign. But yeah, feel free to take a crack at it. Use Capacitor if you want to build an app or something like that. Yeah. If I were you, just to get started, I would build a calculator. I always tell everybody, build a calculator. Just build a calculator, use Capacitor, have it run on your Android device, and that's it. Just try to do that. Just try to build a simple calculator, and then once you have that, that'll give you enough experience to understand how you can get this to work. Or just build the calculator on Android, using Kotlin or Java, whatever. I like using Capacitor. I'd use it again, for sure. You can also use React Native if you want, but you could give this a crack and see how you like it. All right, so I'm over my time. So yeah, if anybody has any other questions, let me know. If you're interested in learning about this kind of stuff, let me know too. Use the Discord, ask questions, and I can point you in the right direction. I have a lot of experience using Capacitor. I have not used version 3. I have used version 2. So the version 2 I can help you. I'm going to look into version 3. I was waiting for them to release this. So I'll probably be playing around with version 3. All right, everybody, I will see you guys on Friday. Bye, everyone.